Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for our Village Elementary Parent Town Hall meeting. We have a full agenda and quite a few questions. I believe over 50 questions were submitted. So forgive my abrupt intro, but we're gonna jump right in. Before we get into our agenda and presentation, I just want to start with an appreciation to our community, to our parents, for really embracing this uncertainty with us. Sorry, here I am. We have, as a state, as a nation, we've been asked to embark on new experiences in a time of unknown, and I know that it has been difficult for my family. I have two public school children. I have a son who is entering the 7th grade and a son who is entering the 10th grade. I've been in education for over 20 years and my wife is an educator, and navigating their role as students in the spring and our role as professionals and as monitors and facilitators for their learning was a challenge, to say the least. I can tell you that my sons need a physical return to campus for their health and their development when it is safe to do so. And so I clearly have empathy for the that we all have right now. Please trust, and I'm hopeful that this morning, at the end of the presentation, you will see that our commitment is to provide as close to a parallel experience as possible to our students, understanding that we can't recreate the experience of an in-person on-campus school, but we are committed to aligning our efforts and trying to make this time of distance learning as valuable and as productive for your child as possible. Just some logistical things to address at the beginning. Questions will be read as received and really are reflective of the wide range of where we are as a community, but frankly as a state, and where many of us fall across the spectrum of school reopening. Some of our responses to questions may feel abrupt. Our goal is to be direct, and there are some very black and white answers to some incredibly complex questions. That being said, you will hear and may become frustrated that some of our answers will be, this has yet to be determined. This has been evolving really over the summer, almost on a daily basis. And we are still waiting for guidance from the County of Public Health, San Diego County Office of Ed, and other government agencies on some of the specifics as to how to implement and provide and experiences aligned with the governor's mandate. I'm going to ask that we jump right into the agenda, and Ms. McGillicott, if you could go ahead to the first slide. Okay, a brief overview of our agenda. We're going to discuss who guides our work, what are the opening options, and I know that the governor's mandate has changed that. We're going to look today at some templates and some sample schedules. We're going to talk about PPE equipment that has been purchased for our school sites. We are going to take a look at what a traditional classroom may look like in various settings, and then go through some hypothetical what ifs. And then we're going to get into questions from our parent and community submissions. I will ask that anyone that is not muted, if they could please mute their phone or their computer, that would be incredibly helpful as we navigate through these slides. Next slide, Cami. Okay, great. Thank you, Cami. Cami has muted all of us. Thank you, Cami. So who guides our work? The next slide, please. Really, our priorities, the priorities that we're following is to always follow the California Department of Public Health and the guidelines that they publish. Again, this has been a moving target, but our ultimate goal is the safety of our staff and our students. To establish systemic protocols, to maintain an inclusive, caring, supportive school culture, and timely communication and transparency with our parents. Next slide. And then next slide. So who is guiding our work? The California Department of Public Health, the California Department of Education, San Diego County Health and Human Services, the County Office of Education, and our partnership with our two labor associations, the Association of Coronado Teachers and CSEA, our classified association. So school reopening guidance, this is commonly referred to as the Big Four: temperature and system screenings, physical distancing, face coverings, increased sanitation. These Big Four will be in play regardless of our reopening approach. So in a distance learning environment, we will have staff on campus and they will, you know, have to adhere to these. And then as we move towards potential reopening scenarios, our students and our families will become much more familiar throughout the presentation with those requirements and where we're at as a district in these efforts. Schools, similar to restaurants and businesses, schools are required to complete reopening checklists. And we have, you know, checklists for each of our 4 school sites that show to the County of Public Health that we have met the requirements that they have outlined, and we will publish those checklists to our community. And then today you're going to get a brief overview of the different reopening learning models: on campus, online, or distance remote learning, and hybrid learning experiences. And I'm going to turn the presentation over to our Director of Learning, Dr. Megan Battle.
Good morning, Village Elementary parents. Thank you so much for being here this morning. As Superintendent Mueller mentioned, we are currently and have been planning since the springtime for 3 different learning options: on campus, hybrid, and then remote virtual learning. As stated in Superintendent Mueller's newsletter this week, we now know, based on guidance from the governor's office, that we will be opening in a remote environment until San Diego is off of the watch list in the state of California. And we'll get to some of those protocols here in a little bit. So regardless of the learning option, all 3 must include these pieces. These are our non-negotiables. We need to have rigorous, standards aligned, engaging teaching and learning. We know what happened in the spring did not work well. We know we jumped into emergency teaching and we did the best we could with the tools we had at the time, and we learned a lot along the way, and that has led us to these non-negotiables. So rigorous teaching and learning must happen in all 3 options. Equity and access for every single one of our students. Social emotional learning is at the forefront. It's critical that, especially in a remote learning environment, for reopening our learning in our campuses, social emotional learning is critical. It's that foundational piece. Our students and our families have been through and are continuing to go through a lot, and having the ability to connect with peers, student to student, and also student to teacher is a priority. Health and safety protocols will be in place according to the checklist. We will be assessing and grading. Meaningful assessments and feedback are a part of each option. Supports for students with disabilities and some of our other students that need additional supports, English language learners, and students that might need tier 2 or 3 supports. And as always, transparent communication with our shareholders as their students navigate each learning option. Thank you, Cami. So according to Assembly Bill 77, the minimum instructional minutes requirements have changed for the 2020-21 school year. As you can see, the adjusted minutes on this slide, kindergarten, the minimum number of daily minutes is 180, grades 1 through 3, 230 minutes daily, and grades 4 through 12, 240 daily minutes. You will see in some of the draft schedules I'll share with you later in the question and answer period that we are adhering to these new requirements and allowing more time to have staggered schedules, time for cleaning and sanitation to happen while cohorts might be moving around campuses in a reopening scenario and so forth. So on Friday, you may have tuned in to Governor Newsom's announcements. He provided a comprehensive overview of that'll guide how schools can provide education when we can reopen. So here are his 5 safety guidelines. So first, if any county is on the monitoring list, then you are not allowed to reopen in an in-person or hybrid learning environment. You must reopen with distance learning. So San Diego is currently on the list. We have all added it to our favorites tab and we're checking it daily. Once a county is off that list, then they have to be off of it for 14 consecutive days. And then we can consider returning to campus with all safety protocols in place. The mask requirements for every student in the state of California, grades 3 and above must wear a mask. This includes staff, and then students in grades 2 and below are encouraged to wear a mask or a face shield. And I'll show you pictures of some of the safety equipment that we've already procured when we are prepared to reopen. Distance learning adaptations, staff needs to maintain 6 feet of distance between each other and between students. Symptom and temperature checks at the beginning of the day, sanitation protocols, and have procedures for quarantine if we have a case that permeates our school boundaries. Regular testing and contact tracing, I will say this is something we're awaiting more guidance on, how we will test staff, how often, who's going to help pay for that. Do we have to have a partnership with local agencies and so forth? So we're still awaiting more information on testing of staff. And then the rigorous distance learning, which we know is how we're starting school in August at this point. Ensure access and connectivity for all students, and we'll address that in the questions. Daily live interactions with students and teachers, and then challenging assignments. So the rigor of the assignments and modifications for students that need modifications need to be in place. So online virtual learning is how we are beginning in August. We know that we are going to be taking daily attendance. We will be providing assessments and grading assignments. We will adhere to the instructional minutes described in the previous slide. In an online virtual learning environment, that 240 daily minutes is a combination of the interaction, live interaction with the teacher teaching the lesson. Over Zoom, we have procured a district Zoom license for every staff member. And then it's in combination with the time value of the assignment. So the independent learning assignments that the student will be completing when they're not on a live Zoom with a teacher. So that has to add up to that minimum of 240 instructional daily minutes. We know that our virtual learning curriculum needs to be rigorous. We have to incorporate that social emotional learning component and build community in a virtual environment. We have a method for providing feedback, office hours with teachers, and as guidelines will allow, opportunities for students to participate in enrichment and extracurricular activities. So we have heard our community. We have been actively listening to feedback the last few months of last school year, and also as we were working throughout the summer. And we have learned a lot last spring from our emergency teaching and learning that we were thrown into. So I wanted to provide this slide to show you what distance learning was like in the spring is not what it's going to look like when your child returns in August in our virtual learning program. So you're going to have a daily learning schedule, whether it's elementary, middle, or high school, daily synchronous instruction with your child's teacher or teachers. The rigorous curriculum that we have adopted, our district adopted curricula. Grades and assessments will be given, daily attendance will be taken, and we have worked to train our staff back in June on a single learning platform. So for the elementary level, that is Google Classroom and Seesaw. Some of your child's teachers may be familiar with some of those programs from the spring, but we will have universal platforms that teachers, students, and we will have training sessions for parents as well, so they can help their child navigate those learning platforms. At the secondary level, we are using solely PowerSchool universally. When we are able to return on campus, we know that we will have all the safety protocols in place. And similar to virtual learning, social emotional learning will be a huge component as we transition to a new normal, wearing masks and abiding by those safety protocols. But similar to has on-campus learning has been in the past, we will be grading, taking attendance, but it will look a little different as far as staggered schedules, trying to keep cohorts with certain cohorts. So a lot of safety protocols will be in place when we can return to campus. And then the hybrid learning environment is really a combination of the last two slides. We will have that rigorous in-class instruction as well as the online instruction, and instruction will happen daily. So you might have an on day where you're on campus, an off day where you're doing activities at home, but there still will be that daily live interaction with your child's teacher or teachers. Similarly, attendance will be taken and grades will be issued as well. As I've stated multiple times, social and emotional wellness is at the forefront. We have a fall task force comprised of COC staff, classified and certificated, our counselors, psychologists, and so forth. And one of the breakout groups is a social and emotional health and wellness group, and also a safety group. So they've been working on how can we support our students' social and emotional well-being in a virtual environment. So we know that that can be difficult to do over Zoom. And so we are planning and getting creative with how we are going to make those connections and allow opportunities for that peer-to-peer interaction, which we know our kids are missing. I know my own children really miss their friends and those interactions, as well as that important interaction with their teacher. Student physical wellness, so PE is still required in grades 1 through 12. We want all of our kids, TK to 12, having daily PE. The one thing that an executive order waived for the 2020-2021 school year has been the minimum number of minutes of PE that we usually need to abide by. So you can expect that in a virtual learning environment, your child will have PE as part of their daily regimen and routine. Cleaning and disinfecting. So abiding by the checklist, there will be daily disinfection of areas that are used by students and staff when we do return to campus in a hybrid or full on-campus model. We have purchased electrostatic cleaners. You may have seen them on the news or on the TV. They're using them in airplanes and office areas, and they have safe chemicals that we can use in classroom spaces for our age groups, and they send out a mist that disinfects the areas immediately. Focus on high-touch surfaces between cohorts. So as students transition throughout the campus, which we will minimize transitions in our schedules. There's a focus on the consistent cleaning throughout the day on high-touch surfaces, restrooms, doorknobs, and also limiting sharing of materials. So anything that could be a high-touch shared surface would be disinfected multiple times a day, and there will be routines in place for that. Screening and temperature checks, we are still getting more guidance. This has changed in the last week a little bit, so we're still getting more guidance on what the daily screening for staff and students will look like relative to a protocol of questions that would need to be asked and taking temperatures, whether it's a passive temperature check that's taken at home and signed off on, or an active temperature check as staff and students arrive to campus. So we're following guidance daily, and we'll adjust our plans accordingly. So this is a question that came up a lot in all campus surveys and in our staff surveys that we facilitated. What happens if schools reopen and the virus permeates the school? So according to Governor Newsom's announcement, he included a slide, and this is taken from his slide on what the schools need to do. We would need to consult with our public health agency here in San Diego County. If it's a one classroom cohort, that cohort would go home until the case is detected, and we would do tracing, contact tracing. A whole school will go home when there are multiple cohorts or 5% of the school is positive. And then the whole district will go into closure if 25% of the schools are closed. And for us, that would be one of our schools. So if one of our schools closes, then our district will have to close down for at least a 14-day period until our public health officials tell us it's safe to reopen. So this slide covers the requirements for physical distancing and some of the measures that we're taking to prepare for on-campus or hybrid instruction. Physical distancing needs to happen in any area of the campus. So during arrival, during departure. So our administrative staff and our fall task force have been working on staggered schedules where students would not all show up at 8 o'clock, but we would cohort them in so they can physically distance during lunch, recess breaks, and in the classrooms. We are purchasing signs and markings on the ground for where to stand in certain areas of the campus in order for our students to adhere to those physical distancing measures. Face coverings, I already covered in the previous slide. Governor Newsom has required them now for grades 3 through 12. We will continue to follow public health guidelines on face coverings, face shields, and it might be in the next slide. There's pictures, well, it's in a few slides. There's pictures of some of the other barriers that we've purchased as well. Hygiene practices is also part of our reopening protocol. So training our students, our teachers, and our families on proper hygiene, including hand washing. We've purchased sanitizing stations that'll be available in every classroom and around campus. We cannot share water fountains. There's water filling stations that we have purchased to be placed in all campuses. And then PPE as needed for specific staff members. Student meals. So we will be providing student meals to all of our students who need it. It might be in a grab and go take home style. It really depends on the schedule. If it's a hybrid schedule or all students are back on campus, what lunch will look like. We know that we will not be funneling students through a closed cafeteria, and we will utilize our outdoor spaces as much as possible in order to physically distance during lunch. Lunch will also be scheduled for specific cohorts. Not all students will have lunch at the same time during the day. So here's some pictures. We have been working on reopening school site templates. So each school site will have their own specific logistical plan, including maps and where students might walk, creating one-way walkways. So in order to limit physical distancing, and bell schedules. So all the logistics based on the reopening checklist that the county has provided. So a typical classroom, desks will be spaced apart. They will be facing the same direction. Students will be wearing masks. We have the transparent barriers. It's a trifold desk barrier that we have purchased for every student as well. We have shields that we've purchased for every staff member, as well as masks. So it is our goal in August and before school starts, and then even ongoing as we transition and pivot into different learning models, is to provide our parent community with the training that they may need in order to be successful in a virtual learning environment, or even when we come back to campus. We plan on providing trainings in our adopted curricula, how to make those virtual connections online, technology support, so training for Google Classroom and for PowerSchool, and other technology softwares that we are using that are supplementary to those main LMS platforms. How to navigate the learning and virtual learning with your child, so how to be successful with the schedules, safety and hygiene, and then enrichment opportunities. So here's a brief timeline of where we've been. We meet weekly with our fall task force. It is a mighty team, and we have many Tiger teams that represent each school site, and also safety, health, and wellness. And they have been working really hard on planning for all three scenarios. So I know we want to have all the details now, but we plan to roll out more details relative to our reopening plans in August. You can see in August, we'll continue to meet with our fall task force. As guidelines change, we'll refine our plans. And we, at this point, are preparing for that virtual learning opening. So you can expect to have more information on what that virtual learning schedules will look like in August. Some of the things that we've done in Coronado Unified to try to stay ahead of the game and to be able to prepare for different scenarios is convening the fall task force. We've been meeting since June, doing parent and staff surveys, limiting inter-district transfers this year in order to keep our numbers down a little bit. And when we do return to campus, we would then have the ability to have smaller class sizes where we can more appropriately socially distance. We provided the June professional development, the 2-week professional development for our teachers, where they were all planning their first virtual unit of study, the first 2 to 3 weeks, to be in a solely virtual environment. And they were trained on PowerSchool, on Google Classroom, using Seesaw, and some of the other supplemental online applications in order to be ready day one with that rigorous instruction that I spoke about. And then we've been actively purchasing PPE and safety equipment for our campuses, so we are ready to open if and when we get off the watch list and we have the green light. So I am going to now hand it back to Superintendent Mueller, and we are going to get into the questions that were submitted on the surveys and provide some responses.
Thank you so much, Dr. Battle. And we are actually going to take turns responding to these questions by department as they relate. But reminder for our parents, this presentation is being recorded. So our families that weren't able to participate live will have access to this link. And we will be sharing this presentation link on our website for families. With that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and ask our Director of Student Services, Ms. Foley, to go ahead and start with question number 1.
Good morning, Village families. Thank you so much for being here. Our first question relates to students with disabilities and a student with an IEP. And the parent wrote, as a parent of a child with an IEP, I'm very concerned with the virtual and hybrid option as in the spring it did not work for him and he has regressed without the support and socialization that in-person school offers him. Will the school offer home aids or ABA for students if the virtual model is decided upon? So this is obviously a very complex question, and you heard in Dr. Battle's part of the presentation that our current order does not allow for students to be served on campus or for staff to be serving students in their homes. We are closely monitoring that. However, both our certificated and classified staff have been trained on the technology needed to provide a virtual learning platform, and individual student services per an IEP will be provided in that manner.
Okay, I'll go ahead and take the next question. It reads, have you looked at how college online courses help or work? Any better systems to help kids understand what is required and how the online systems work than last semester? How will students be held accountable for work submitted, and how can a parent know and help check children are submitting completed work? How will the teacher assist in the students completing work? How will teachers have learning sessions to make sure each student is receiving their education and help when needed? And have you looked at charter schools and how they work with their online learning and meeting with students to check work and give new materials? So yes, we have been consulting with local community college and other online institutions and organizations across the bridge related to effective distance learning platforms and practices. We incorporated those essential components into our distance learning template that teachers were trained on in June, which I'll share with you when we get to another question. Additionally, Coronado Unified will be using PowerSchool as our main platform, as our secondary platform for middle and high, and then Google Classroom and Seesaw for our elementary. These platforms will allow teachers to regularly post grades and provide feedback, very specific feedback on assignments. Parents have access to these platforms and will provide training for our parents as well. Grades will be given. Teachers will hold weekly office hours and support time outside of the scheduled class periods to provide that extra individualized support on assignments and classwork. And additionally, like I mentioned, we will be training all of our students and our parents on how to navigate these platforms in order to be successful. So the next question, despite choosing in-person learning on the survey, I have now decided my fourth grader will do distance learning at home at least until Christmas break, potentially the whole year. How will Village do distance learning? What programs, formats, teachers will you use? Any info about the number of hours a day? How much will be on the computer? Will there be some on paper assignments? Is there a plan, or will you be winging it or viewing it as temporary like it was for the end of last year? Are we better off choosing K-12 online public school or another online charter school such as Connections Academy? Or do you think Village will be able to accommodate longer term distance learning just as well? So as I try to describe in the presentation, virtual learning will require that live daily interaction between teachers and students, and it will look very different than it did in the spring. The combined hours of live instruction and individual assignments will be equivalent to at least 240 minutes a day, so there will be a daily schedule provided. And we are committed to providing that robust virtual learning option that will be provided the whole year if families choose to stay in that option. And it will not look like the emergency teaching that took place in the spring. All school sites will be able to accommodate that longer term virtual option as well.
Thank you, Dr. Battle. The next question, I will not be letting my children attend in-person class. Will there be a fully virtual option? Yes, while all students per the governor's mandate will open in a virtual environment, we will still provide an option for our families that are most comfortable having their student or their child stay in a virtual learning environment for the entire year. We are going to be submitting, as stated on the timeline, for a commitment from our parents, as that information will help us guide staffing decisions and class assignments as we open up in August 27th. Next question, will there be opportunities for teachers and aides to meet virtually with students experiencing delay or regression in some form of a one-on-one session? Yes, as Dr. Battle stated earlier, and as Ms. Foley stated, we will provide opportunities for students to receive individualized support and instruction where appropriate and where needed.
Okay, the next question, how will the district provide the instructional minutes required without relying on electronic programs to teach? So we will be having a combination of live, synchronous, virtual instruction and independent student activities. So we will have synchronous and asynchronous instruction during our virtual learning plan. Additionally, teachers will have flexibility to incorporate the research-based flipped classroom model in order to focus on student understanding and mastery of the content standards when they are facilitating the live synchronous forms.
Okay, the next question is, how will special services like instruction from reading specialists coordinate with classroom teachers? A, will they begin right from the start of school? So I'll go ahead and answer that. Yes, those services will begin just like they would if students were physically on campus right in those first few weeks. B, will children using these services last year automatically be enrolled? Yes, our system of maintaining supports that were in place for students, whether they were determined via a student study team or whether a classroom teacher referred a student for more additional intervention services, that would roll from grade level to grade level. So those intervention services will be, there is no need to enroll. I would encourage you to speak with your classroom teacher once the school year gets started. Let them know that your student had specialized services the previous year, and we'll be sure to have those in place. And then otherwise, how are they determined if they need it? So typically, just like if we were back in a brick and mortar model, any specialized programming for a student or need for other intervention outside of the classroom typically starts with the classroom teacher, a referral from the classroom teacher. We would go through a student study process. And so I would encourage you to speak with your child's teacher once we're back in, once the year has resumed.
Thank you, Neve. This question has 5 parts to it, so I'll answer them in that order. Families who are not comfortable sending kids back to school but want to have a social bubble are finding learning coaches to lead smaller learning groups. If a group is formed, say 6 through 10 students, how will that work with the school? So if your child is enrolled at Village Elementary, he or she will be placed in a classroom by grade level. In this remote learning model, in particular, with the collaboration and the planning going into the templates, grade levels will align experiences and content as a team. Can the group request one teacher to streamline and help teacher, parent, student with one point of contact for those students? So this gets to the response that I had on a previous question about surveying our parents for a commitment. We are going to staff in a model where, for the elementary, where we have per grade level 1 distance learning lead. We know that a percentage of our parents aren't comfortable sending their students back and will opt for a distance learning or virtual learning environment for the entire school year. Students who opt for that will be placed in this distance learning lead class, and that individual will facilitate learning in that environment when students come in and out of, they will stay in that teacher's classroom as other students return to class with their teachers when conditions allow for that. So can the group request one teacher to streamline? No, we are going to go through our traditional placement of students by grade level and believe that alignment of content and experiences will support this learning bubble or team. Next sub question, will those students be required to Zoom with the Village teacher if they have an in-person live learning coach teaching the Village assigned lessons? Yes. We will be taking attendance, and the expectation is if you are enrolled in Village Elementary School, your child will be attending the experiences that his or her teacher will be providing. In this scenario, can the student stay enrolled at Village Elementary and work with the classroom teacher through the learning coach for accountability with the assignments? This to me sounds familiar to a tutor. So absolutely, if a child is enrolled and attending Village Elementary School, he or she will remain enrolled in our district and in our program as long as he or she is attending. Can the in-person instruction with the learning coach count as the virtual minutes required by the classroom teacher? So as Dr. Battle shared in the presentation, and I know another question later in the presentation will address this, allocation of minutes will be determined by the grade level and will be a combination of what daily live interactions will be, but then also independent practice. So when the teachers determine or allocate a designated period of time for that independent practice, yes, it would be included or counted as the question just asked. Next question, similar theme. Are we able to find out who our kids' teachers will be earlier so that we can get groups together? If we are virtual, these kids can study together in smaller groups outside of the school. As I stated, if your child is enrolled in Village Elementary School, he or she will be placed in a classroom by grade level. And again, we are aligning experiences by grade level and content. So whether or not people within your child's learning team bubble have the same teacher, they will be able to share those experiences because there will be alignment in content.
Okay, the next question has to do with technology. Will we be able to borrow a laptop from the district office again like we did in the spring? How will that work? What will the process be? And when would those devices be available for pickup? The answer is yes. Next week in the newsletter, we'll share a link for families to request devices for their students, similar to the process that we followed in the spring. Devices will be available for pickup beginning mid-August by appointment only for families that have completed the online registration process and for those that have requested a device through that questionnaire.
Okay, next question. Why can't teachers participate fully in class via Zoom, have them actually teaching the lessons like math, social studies, etc., so that the children actually stay in place and learn? So yes, as part of our distance learning plan for August and in the fall, direct and live instruction and interaction is a requirement of AB 77 and Governor Newsom's distance learning expectations. So that live daily interaction will be in place in distance learning. Next question, can you please discuss what a day of virtual learning might look like for students in the fall? I'm interested in how much peer-to-peer and student-teacher interaction there will be, how much time online will be required, how much of the day will be spent online versus doing work on the side, and whether there will be required daily meeting times or whether the schedule is flexible. Thank you for any insights. So we will be providing more comprehensive schedules in August for each school site for elementary, middle, and high. Fall will provide daily opportunities for the teacher, student, and peer-to-peer interactions according to a schedule. So for example, at the elementary level, a student might log in at 8 o'clock, and from 8 to 8:30, they're getting that morning meetup and the social emotional learning, getting an overview of the day. Then it might move into an ELA direct instruction, a lesson where the student is receiving a lesson directly live from their teacher for reading or writing. And then the student would log off, have some independent assignments, and then the schedule would have them log back on during the math block. So the morning blocks at the elementary level would focus on the core instruction and having that live daily interaction with the teacher according to a schedule. The independent practice work is where the flexibility will be incorporated. Additionally, teachers at the elementary level will be meeting with students by specific appointments for smaller reading groups where they will have guided reading. For the secondary, So there will be a balance of time spent online and independent work, as we're sensitive to screen time as well. So Cami, do you mind sharing the schedules, a sample lesson plan?
It's that one that you learned.
Oh, yes, yes. So this is a sample elementary lesson plan for first grade. And as you can see, there would be designated time for ELA, writing, and math. And if we can kind of scroll down a little bit. Yeah, so we can scroll down and you can see that there will be time built in for direct instruction and independent practice, small group instruction, and then the individual activities. So this will occur for reading, writing, math, and then history, social science, the enrichment opportunities, the specials that your child is typically used to receiving in an on-campus model. So if we can scroll all the way down, Kimmy. Yeah, so the Grow Your Brain. Oh wait, let's go back up to the purple. There we go, thank you. The afternoon time would be spent providing kind of these extension and enrichment opportunities with our specials teachers and for VAPA and PE and so forth. And then a secondary lesson plan looks similar for those of you who might have secondary students. This would be a typical English 9 lesson following those essential standards, content standards, and then we can scroll down and keep scrolling. And then how assessments will be provided in a virtual environment and how the teacher will be giving feedback via PowerSchool or office hours. And then how the direct instruction will take place via Zoom, some pre-recorded, reading or watching videos, and then the independent practice and small group support. Okay, we can go back to the slideshow now. Thank you, Cami. So I hope that gives you a little overview. We do plan to provide specific bell schedules. So you will know your child's grade level schedule and when they would need to be logging in to have that live interaction. The next question, will teachers provide a full day of interaction and live lectures to keep the kids engaged instead of parents providing instruction? Live lectures throughout the day seem essential. So yes, a specific schedule will be provided and they will have those live sessions for at least 240 instructional minutes.
I've got the next question. Has USD looked into outdoor classes and classrooms? It seems like our weather and small district size would be an ideal place to try this concept. I think it's definitely something we should be exploring if CUSD isn't already. It's a great idea. Yes, utilizing outdoor spaces for instructional activities is something we're exploring as part of our hybrid and on-campus options.
Okay, if you decide to do on-campus learning, is there going to be recess and will the day be from 8 to 2:30 p.m.? Yes, there will be recess and lunch when we return to on-campus learning with all safety measures in place. So there will be staggered schedules in order to keep cohorts of students together and implement all safety protocols and procedures. The typical school day schedule has not been finalized but you can expect students to be on campus near the similar hours as they would be. Which data are you using to inform decision-making for next year? So we have been utilizing data provided from our public health agencies, the American Association of Pediatrics, educational research, and information that we receive from CDE and our San Diego County Office of Ed. And that has guided our work and will continue to guide our decision-making with these learning models.
Thank you, Dr. Battle. If school goes back into session, full or part-time, what measures will take place to provide a safe environment for our children? This question also mentions some provisions that other countries have put in place, Japan, Mexico. Are any of these ideas being discussed? So upon full or part-time return to campus, all safety protocols as outlined by County Department of Public Health and the reopening checklist will be followed in Coronado. These include, but are not limited to, things discussed earlier: hygiene, symptom and temperature screening, frequent sanitation of high-touch areas in between all student transitions, face coverings, desk dividers, face shields, social distancing, and use of creative scheduling of student cohorts is also being considered, depending on the conditions in which we are cleared to return. Next question, how are you modifying student or staff mobility during the school day? As Dr. Battle shared, we're developing schedules that are staggered in order to adhere to social distancing guidelines, creating cohorts of students to limit transitions during the school day, and will provide signage and directional markings that will facilitate one-way movements of individuals and traffic flow on our campuses.
Okay, I have the next two questions. What personal protective equipment, PPE requirements and recommendations are you considering? How can you deliver on effective hand washing and sanitizing needs? So we have completed our order. We've received our PPE requests. All staff and students will be provided with a cloth mask in addition to a reusable face shield. Additionally, protective equipment for health office staff have been procured, N95 masks, gowns, etc. Additionally, we have purchased and received transparent shield barriers to be placed where appropriate. I'm sure many of you have seen it at restaurants or cashiers. We have those trifold, as you saw in the pictures as well by Dr. Battle. Additionally, frequent hand washing and sanitizing throughout the school will be built into classroom schedules and will be included in our procedures. Next question, in the event of a confirmed case involving someone at school, have you considered two-way mandatory reporting with your local health officer and department? Public health officials have provided us with communication templates and procedures that will guide the process in the event of a confirmed case on one of our campuses, and as such, we'll continue to work very closely with public health should a case arrive.
Thank you, Mr. Salamanca. I'm going to, there's a lot of similarity in this question in the event of a confirmed case at school, but they do ask, this question asks specifically about contact tracing, cleaning, closing, and reopening, and who will pay for those tests. Obviously, again, we're gonna follow guidance from County of Public Health. The governor laid out what percentages of cohorts would drive quarantining or school closures when we do return. And while Governor Newsom recent announcement included frequent testing for staff members, they have not defined guidance there as to where that testing would take place and whom would be responsible and accountable for monitoring or providing those tests.
Okay, how are you leaning into your key partners and vendors like transportation, food service, daycare, and others? This is an evolving process where we're working very closely with our individual departments and vendors to ensure that they're in compliance with industry and department standards. Things are going to change with regard to our food service department and meal service, and we're just going to continue to follow public health guidelines as we move forward.
Okay, next question. How will recess, if any, be handled? How about lunchtime? Will classrooms be separated and eating in areas sanitized before next students and after? Recess and lunch will occur on staggered schedules, and cohorts of students will not intermingle. All high-touch surfaces will be sanitized before and after each group. Next question. What device break fix protocols will you need to beef up in the event that you have to move in and out of emergency remote learning? So all students will be provided with a device if requested for the entire school year, thus making it easier for us to transition seamlessly between various learning environments. We do have devices on hand in case one breaks or needs to be fixed that families can change out. Next question, we have to get better at delivering synchronous and asynchronous learning. So yes, this has been noted, and we are definitely incorporating more expectations into our new virtual learning plan for next year. And another question, what school schedules may need to be modified to reduce student mobility during the day and mitigate risks? For instance, should you have teachers travel to classrooms for specials or electives? So yes, all school schedules are being modified for a hybrid or on-campus learning option. And those schedules will be staggered in order to limit those student transitions.
The next question, what modifications need to be made to our visitor and volunteer management system? We're in the process of revising our protocols and procedures. Much of the guidance suggests limiting non-essential personnel. We will follow suit with that. For those individuals that need to be on campus, they will have to follow our safety protocols that are in place. So screening, temperature checks, and frequent hand washing. The next question, what tools and supplies will teachers and other staff need in each scenario, including virtual scenarios? In May, our staff completed a virtual learning survey to identify the supplies and applications that they felt would be necessary to operate in a successful virtual learning environment. Based off of that feedback, and since May, we decided to purchase supplemental virtual learning materials in addition to the requested instructional materials and supplies. One such example was purchasing whiteboard and pens for every student in grades TK through 12. This will help facilitate distance learning, and teachers and students will have the ability to check for understanding and assess mastery of content on the information. Next question, what busing and transportation scenarios will unfold and how will we modify parent drop-off and pick up if there's a dramatic surge in this method of transportation? CUSD currently has an RFP out to secure a new busing vendor. As you may know, the contract ended with our previous provider in June. We anticipate that there may be a shift to parents dropping off. We're working with site leaders on scenarios that include staggered start and end times to help facilitate smooth and less crowded drop-offs where possible.
Thank you, Mr. Salamanca. I will take the next question. And just for the parents, I know we're running right at 10 o'clock. We do have a section of questions on childcare, and I'm going to ask that we create an FAQ and we send that to Dr. Bergener so she can push that out to her families because I don't think we're going to have time to answer those 11 questions. Question, staffing and hiring. Will teachers be reluctant to return to school? If they refuse to return to school, does that mean you need to aggressively recruit? Our Human Resources Department is meeting with individual teachers per their requests to discuss their potential limitations regarding a return to campus. As many of you are aware, the state has deemed educators as essential workers. And as such, our members are beholden to the collective bargaining agreement. We understand that some of our colleagues are uncomfortable returning, and we are working through our Human Resources Department where appropriate, but we also are aware that some of our colleagues, as some of our families, are going to have difficult decisions to make about a return to campus. Megan, do you want to just grab that one hybrid question and then we'll skip to the end?
Okay, if hybrid, are the kids expected to be in a Zoom meeting all day? So no, students will not be on Zoom all day. The minimum number of daily instructional minutes is 240. So this is a combination of live synchronous virtual instruction and independent student activities. Additionally, teachers have flexibility to incorporate that flipped classroom model as I described earlier in order to then be assessing mastery of standards during those live sessions.
Great. And we're going to skip down to the final 4 questions. They fell into the other category. And one question that wasn't related to a reopening, but there were actually 2 questions aligned with this theme, so we felt it was appropriate to respond. Do you believe CUSD students are systematically racist? No. I believe that every child every day has the right to feel safe, valued, and respected while in our care. And if we haven't created the conditions on our campuses where that is inherent to who we are as a school community, we're going to do everything in our power to fix it immediately. And I believe that schools should be intentional in effort as it relates to ensuring students are exposed to diverse perspectives. This can be through policy, curriculum, or experiences, but really fundamentally at the core, the first opportunity for us as educators is listening and awareness. And as academic institutions, you know, those interactions provide opportunities for learning and for growth. That applies to our staff, our students, our community, and I'm clearly on that list.
Okay, would it be possible to have teacher and classroom assignments established more than one day before the start of school to allow ample time for teachers and families to get set up for distance education on the first day? I believe this model does not work well with potential distance learning. So we are exploring our schedules during that first week of school, starting on the 27th, in order to allow individual time for teachers and families to connect. So those virtual learning expectations can be established and published, including time for parents and teachers to have mini conferences before diving into the first unit of study.
Thank you. And final question, per the governor's office, a waiver may be submitted for elementary schools to open for in-person instruction, even if the county is on the monitoring list. Will CUSD submit a waiver to the local health office requesting for Coronado to allow in-person instruction? We believe strongly that it's our responsibility to keep every option and every opportunity available to our students. As such, when we receive clear guidance from the County of Public Health on that waiver, we will be submitting a waiver, and we'll continue to update our community on the status of that process, unfortunately, once it's been defined. But to answer your question, yes, we will be submitting a waiver to keep our options open for our learners and for our parents. And then I wanted to end it on, it wasn't a question, it was commentary, but we really appreciated this, and I think it really encapsulates where we're all at with wanting our students back, interacting with peers and with adults other than their parents and their guardians. Dear CUSD, teachers are an inspiration to our children. They are more than just academics. They share their life experiences, their journeys, and their passions. My child will miss meeting with her teachers and friends every day. If there is any way of connecting, we should try to do that. I will take anything that you guys can provide. I still think in person will be risky, but if there is a way, I'll trust you as a school district. I'm willing to volunteer my time. Let me know if cleaning, organizing, and helping with anything can speed this up. Thank you. I really think that that's a great way to finish this morning's forum. We know our parents are feeling, you know, the uncertainty and navigating these waters alongside our educators, but we all have the same goal, and that's to get our students back interacting with their peers, experiencing the joy of friendship and learning, and you know, those shared experiences are something that are very difficult to replicate in a remote learning. So please trust, on behalf of the governing board and the staff, we want to do everything in our power to get our students back as quickly but as safely onto our campuses as possible. And we appreciate your patience and entrusting your students to us. We will post this presentation online and get information out about childcare that was asked that we didn't get to. And please continue reviewing the weekly updates. As guidance changes, we will provide that information to our community as quickly and as efficiently as possible. Thank you so much for your feedback. Thank you for participating this morning. And we will see you shortly. Have a great day.